Okay, I'd like to call to order the Urban Design Commission meeting for Wednesday, October 11th, 2010. We'll begin with roll call.
Mark Kimmerer.
Here.
Douglas Gasek.
Here.
Patrick Coleman.
Here.
James Dougherty.
Here.
Jim Sawhill.
Here.
Andrew Garsha.
Here.
Tricia Joyner.
Here.
Jeff Dinwiddie.
Here.
Thomas Tiber.
Here. I don't need to do that, right?
Not necessary.
Okay. We ask those present a little patience tonight. We're going through a procedure that we haven't done before, so we're going to try to walk through by the numbers. We ask your patience as we muddle through here. The first item on the agenda is disclosures. And disclosures, I guess I owe this board an apology. There was a mess-up in procedure last time, and fortunately that's resulted in additional instructions on handling disclosures that you were all given today. But I had excused myself, feeling that I had a conflict of interest on one of the cases last time, and that always should be accompanied by a vote of the board. And there's some disagreement as to whether the issues that I cited truly constitutes a conflict or not. And so with this time to reflect since the last meeting and the additional information that we have, we'll try to handle the disclosures portion a little bit more formally tonight and get to better handling of the cases, specifically with regard to number 2 on the agenda, which sort of hangs in the balance from last time. So, does anyone have any disclosures they wish to make? Commissioner Kimmerer.
Yes, I'd like to make disclosures on 2 cases, if appropriate. One is under Special Order of Business number 2, case 2010-064, Providence Sign Variance Request. The petitioning landscape architecture company involved in that project originally in the original sign variance is a former employer of mine. I don't feel like I have any conflict or I don't have any financial interest in the project now, but I thought I should make it clear that that was the case. And also the same situation on number 1 on the consent agenda for case 2009-017. Oops, sorry about that.
Okay.
Sorry, it was number 2, case 2010-024, Veterans Memorial.
Since procedure is so important here, do we take action on each of the claimed issues, or do we take them both together? It seems like it would be easiest if we addressed each case separately and whether or not a conflict exists.
Mr. Chairman, I believe in this case it would be appropriate to deal with each disclosure on each case separately in the case of Mr. Kimmerer.
If that is the case, then I would look for a motion to direct Commissioner Kimmerer to participate in the reconsideration of 2010-064, which is the Providence sign variance. Do I have a motion? It's been moved by Commissioner Gasek and seconded by Commissioner Dinwiddie. Do we actually? Okay. Commissioner Gasek, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I'm going to support the motion. It seems Commissioner Kimmerer worked for the employer, but it's in the past and there isn't a conflict at this point anymore.
And did I understand you, Mark, you said that you don't feel that you can judge impartially?
That's correct.
Okay. So do we actually vote then, using our voting button?
Or we can vote. It's your option up there.
Okay, I'm proceeding with caution here. Are there any objections to passing the motion? Hearing and seeing none, you're directed to participate in that case.
Thank you.
Now let's address the second point that Commissioner Kimmer for case 2010-024. You have a motion, and that would be to direct Commissioner Joyner. Would you please speak?
I'll support the motion, and Mr. Kimmer worked for them in the past, but no longer has a conflict or financial interest and can participate fairly in the discussion.
And it's your feeling that you...
That's correct.
Okay. That's been seconded. Any objections to passing the motion? Hearing and seeing none, you're directed to participate in that case as well. Getting back to other disclosures. There were some other people on the list. Let me get my screen back. Mr. Dinwiddie.
I have a disclosure. My wife works part-time for Providence. She's a PRN therapist. She might work one day a week. And I was reading through, it's not a substantial financial gain, but she does work for Providence, and it's a disclosure. So.
And you feel that you can rule impartially on that case?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to have a motion to direct Commissioner Dinwiddie to participate. Commissioner Garcia.
I believe Commissioner Dinwiddie does not have a personal financial interest in this matter at this point. His family serves to benefit in no way based on the sign variance being requested. I believe he should participate in the discussion.
That's been seconded by Commissioner Tiber. Any objection having Commissioner Dinwiddie participate? Hearing and seeing none, you're directed to participate. Screen, come back. Somebody else on there too. Commissioner Tiber.
Yes, I need to disclose that my wife is employed by Dowell HKM, who is presented the sign variance request to case 2010-064 for Providence, and I believe I have a financial interest because of her employment with Dowell HKM.
Go back to the 6 points that were issued to us. Which one? And I would direct the commissioners to look at point E on the very last page, which is there's 6 points to test whether Commissioner Tiber's claim constitutes a conflict. And so I would entertain a motion. Commissioner Garcia?
Is your wife a partner or owner of Dowell Engineering?
She is not.
Okay, I just had that question. And then, since his family does not have an interest substantially or as a private interest in Dowell Engineering, I believe he should participate.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Dinwiddie. Any opposition to the motion?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a couple questions, please? I did request to speak. I used my machine. I guess Commissioner Tiber, this one's a little bit tougher for me. You know, your wife is employed at Dowell Engineers. I would guess that's a pretty substantial financial interest for your family.
do you feel comfortable participating in cases that Dowell has? Do you feel you can be fair and unbiased, or is it your preference not to participate?
While I personally believe I could be fair and unbiased, I think there would be a public perception that would not be the case, and I believe that it's not necessarily whether the bias is real, but whether or not it would be a perceived bias based on that there's a financial interest there with my wife's employment. And I wouldn't want to taint or potentially taint any case they were presenting.
And what's her position there?
She's a drafter in the engineering department.
Okay. Thank you.
So that was a question that wasn't in opposition to the motion. Okay, the question remains, is there any opposition to the motion?
For the reasons that Mr. Tiber mentioned, I think when the petitioner is a spouse or works for the spouse of a commission member, I think that clearly that could be perceived as a conflict. Whether or not there's financial gain, just that there's that perception of you talking about an issue that might affect the person who's employed there some way. And in the past, we've always excused people when they felt that way about an issue. So I would I would not support the motion in this instance.
If we don't have a unanimous consensus, I think we just use the voting buttons. But again, I beg your patience as we work our way through this. So are we looking for just if the majority rules, then he's directed to participate? It's not a matter of all or nothing.
That's correct.
Then I think we need to use the voting buttons.
Yes, means you will.
Yeah, just clarify. Yes means he will participate, and no means he will not. So it looks like 5 no's, 3 yeses, and abstain. So he'll be directed not to participate in the Providence sign variance case. Any other disclosures? I think this is a leftover from before. Commissioner Joyner, or was that for some other reason? Well, I have a disclosure, and it's the same. It's the Providence 2010-064 case, and I gave some of the highlights at the last meeting, but it's a similar concern that I have, and I'm not sure where it lands, and I guess we'll just let the commission hear my reasoning. But the company that I work for and I'm a majority owner of has had a long-standing relationship with Providence Hospital. And as I stated last time, we actually designed all of the new buildings that are on the Creekside campus, the regional building, the parking garage, the child care center, the Hickle House, towers S, T, and U. And as a private client, they have the ability to reward us with new work if we do a good job. And I felt awkward in that the case before us last time was a variance, which is something that should be regulated by very specific points with a yes or no on the 6 points that we had. There wasn't clarity in the package, and my tendency, I was feeling conflicted, because my tendency would be to give Providence the benefit of the doubt. Now, yes, I have financial stake, not necessarily on this project, but in my perceived conflict in dealing with Providence in at least where my mind was at the last meeting was, I felt, affecting my ability to be impartial. Now, was that because of the fact that Providence is an important client, or because Providence Hospital is an important institution in town, I really don't know. I couldn't draw the line. But rather than risk the appearance of impropriety, I wanted to excuse myself so that wasn't an issue. Now I bring it up again this time because now we have some specific evidence or some specific guidance from staff in more clarity in the staff package that's been put together, which was one of the cited problems from the last case. And because I feel I have clear guidance, I don't feel there's much of an objection. My objection was feeling like I had to vote against our client simply on the basis of rule, not because it was a good idea or not. And now, because it's easier, I don't feel it's as much of a conflict because I can vote yes and support my client. Because I'm feeling that way, I feel I have a conflict. So, and I don't want to risk the gray area at all. If there's a conflict, I feel like I should be removed from participating. But as has been brought to my attention, that shouldn't be my decision. That should be the board's decision. So that's where I stand. I will entertain a motion to direct me to participate. Commissioner Sawhill.
Mr. Chairman, I do not intend to support the motion. I think Providence would be a major client for anyone in town, and if I was in your shoes, I would have a tough time, and I would feel uncomfortable participating. You can't vote against a big client, and that's a substantial income to your firm on an annual basis. And I just think in this case it's not appropriate for you to participate. So I will not be supporting the motion.
That motion has been seconded. Do I? Since this is me, do I do this? Or
We just got to vote now, Mr. Chairman. So
yeah, why don't we just vote?
That's fine. Okay, so hold on.
Yes means I participate. No means I don't.
And you just abstain.
So those are all no votes. I will not be participating. And just another, since the very next issue on the agenda is the reconsideration, the proper procedure, because the motion was made by Commissioner Sawhill, who would ordinarily take the gavel in my absence, this case will be presided over by Commissioner Joyner.
Go to the little room.
Okay, the issue before us now is the sign variance case from last month. There was a request to reconsider it by Commissioner Sawhill, so we will be voting on whether or not to reconsider the sign variance. And this is the first time in my 6 years on the commission that we've done this, so I think it's worth going through the 4 steps, the procedures that were given to us by staff to make sure we all understand this. And they are, one is one of the commissioners moves for reconsideration, and Commissioner Sawhill has done that. Well, he will. He'll make a motion. He's asked for it to be reconsidered, so he has to make the motion. If the motion does not get a second, then it's denied, and it ends as in the last month with being denied. If the motion does receive a second, then we'll vote up or down on whether or not to reconsider the case. And if that vote is a yes, the case is scheduled to be heard. And as I understand, we can consider it tonight in executive session, or we can ask it to be brought back next month or when it can be advertised as a hearing. If we vote and it's voted down, then it also stands as denied from the last month. So, let's see. I think that covers how the process. Does everybody understand the process before we? Okay. So I'll entertain a motion from Commissioner Sawhill, and he will give the reasons for the request.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In case 2010-64, I move for a reconsideration of the signed variance. And the reasons I've moved for reconsideration is it came to my attention that we had a procedural issue at our last meeting by formally disclosing, voting on the disclosures, and having two members removed from being able to participate. It actually takes the required vote to pass those variances down from 5 members to 4. So that kind of changes the complexity of this tough issue. I thought that we would benefit from analysis from staff of the 6 standards for the variance request. That information was missing from our last packet and has since been provided. And whenever we have variances, they're always tough. Any controversial case is tough. And I think sometimes it's beneficial to reconsider a case when we have more commission members available to analyze and look at the case and give it a full, fair hearing. So for those reasons, I moved for reconsideration and would appreciate your support.
Commissioner Coleman has seconded the motion, so we will be voting on it. And if there's discussion on the motion, which would be the reconsideration, not the issue of the variance, then you could request to speak now. No? Everyone's ready to vote? Okay, then we'll vote on it. And the vote is whether or not we reconsider the. He's recused, yeah. So the motion is passed to reconsider the variance request. And the next issue before us is if we consider it tonight or we consider it at a future time. I did have one question on that. Looking at the packet, I couldn't tell that if the entire text of the 6 variance issues are included or if there's synopsis of it. It seems like we don't have as much information as last time. But I guess staff may know that.
Madam Chair. The 6 standards for each of the 2 variances, they are very brief. You would almost miss it if you read through quickly, but they do begin on page 3 for variance 1 at the top of page 3, and then for the second variance halfway down page 4. Ms. Bergeson addressed the standards for each one.
Is that the complete text of those?
Yes, ma'am. It's brief.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion on when we hear this. vote. We have a motion by Commissioner Dinwiddie.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we hear this tonight for the fact that we have 7 voting members. All of us, I particularly listened to the audio from last month. I think it's fair to the petitioner that we get this decided tonight, and we have a short agenda, so I would make a motion that we get this done.
The motion's been seconded by Commissioner Kimmer. Is there discussion? Any objection to hearing it now? Okay. So I think we'll go back to report from the staff. Or no, we do this differently. So.
Once you move to reconsider it, you pick up from where it was closed. In other words, where you made the motion, first motion to approve, and that's where you start. So if you do have additional questions, you put a motion on the floor, and then if you've got questions for staff.
Do we have the text for the motion last time? Yeah. Mr. Sawhill.
Lynn, some assistance, I believe. I believe now that we have the motion of reconsideration, what we have now is our motion back in front of us. That's technically where we stand in the process. So we can continue our deliberations amongst ourselves. We have the opportunity to ask staff additional questions if we would like some clarifications. And we could even ask the petitioner additional questions if we feel that their information would be beneficial to our deliberations. So where we are is back to the motion that was denied.
And here's the text of the motion. Okay. And the motion was by Commissioner Coleman. He moved to approve the case with the conditions as spelled out, and I believe everyone is either here or has reviewed the meeting to know what the conditions were and what was said last time.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that I would add to that is that it appears that staff has recommended an additional condition on each variance in their analysis, so we may want to amend our motion to add that additional condition.
Okay, maybe we'll see if there are questions of staff first. Does anyone have questions of staff before we? Any of the additional information that was provided? Are there questions of the petitioner?
I have a question.
So we'll have the petitioner come forward if you want to ask. Or did you have a staff question?
I think staff can answer
Okay.
the question. On the variance 1, exceed maximum sign area on 2 instructional signs, how much are, my understanding is it 6 square feet, or was the unified sign plan, how much larger is the variance that they're asking for?
Madam Chairman, I defer to the applicant for that. I'm afraid I'm not familiar enough percentage-wise or square feet-wise how much larger it is.
Do we have the petitioner come forward to answer questions?
Hi, I'm Michelle McNulty with Dodge Cam. The sign code says that it should be no larger than 6 square feet. However, the unified sign plan adopted the largest sign at 96 square feet, and the largest sign that we are asking to add is 111 square feet. So it's about a 15, 16 square foot difference from what has already been approved by the unified sign plan.
How many signs are over the 96 square feet?
Just 2.
How many signs are under the 96 square feet?
There are, I believe, 8 signs that are approved.
How, under 96 square feet, how many, what relation is the smallest sign? Is it 50 square feet? Is it 25 square feet?
I don't actually have, I didn't grab the sign plan with me. I didn't know that we'd be coming up for you this evening to talk. However, I believe that the smallest of the approved is somewhere between 60 and 70 square feet.
That's pretty much all I had a question on.
Okay.
Commissioner Gasick, do you have questions of the petitioner?
Staff.
Staff, okay.
And there seemed to be a lot of confusion the last time this came up with separating the two variances out, where there was some direction given where the first one that we were dealing with was just a variance for size. But when we look at these sign variances, don't we look at the whole issue at large? The location, the size, the placement, its relation to the other things all as one? Or can we split out size? And that's just a really important question for me to get some direction on.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gasick, the Commission is free to split them out as much detail as individually as you like.
So we can just vary size for one. Okay.
However, for a variance, they have to meet all 6 standards, if that's
Right.
what you're asking. Okay.
Yeah, and that's where it gets a little confusing because we're applying all these standards, but I'll just get more into the debate. But
Commissioner Dinwiddie, you've spoken. You could take your name off. Commissioner Coleman, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question for staff or the chair, I guess. As I've read the new staff analysis, we need 2 motions on the sign variance, 1 for each sign. And then are we dealing with the revisions to the unified sign code or sign plan that is not being considered?
I believe just
Just
a
the
variance
variance.
for the 2 signs, but we'll ask staff.
Madam Chair, yes, I had pushed the request to speak button because I had a question for Commissioner Sawhill. In his original email, he did include all of the legal language to include both the variances and the master plan and the site plan, the sign plan, rather. So I wasn't certain myself if we were considering all items or not, but I think Mr. Sawhill just cleared that up. So I'm shaking his head no.
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding from the petitioner that they just want us to deal with the reconsideration of the sign variance. They're not interested in opening up the unified sign plan. But I would note the additional condition that's added was to administratively add it to the sign plan, which I found interesting. On page 10 of our packet is staff's new recommendations. No, it's having a hard time finding them. If you can bear with me for just a second.
Yeah, 10 and
On page 4 of our packet is the staff's recommendations for the first sign variance. The additional condition is this approval will be included in the unified sign plan through the planning department. So administratively, this variance then would add this sign to the unified sign plan. So that's the additional condition that was added to the first variance. And there's a similar condition on page 5 at the bottom. Staff is recommending an additional condition that this approval will be included in the unified sign plan through the planning department. So those are the 2 conditions. And I guess, as long as I'm talking, I was interested in getting the applicant's feedback on that condition. Do you have any objection to that condition? Is that fine with you? I think you need to come up and speak into the microphone, please.
We are fine with the way this condition is, but we would like to add that it be approved through the administratively, just to ensure that we are not required to come back before you to open that back up.
So approval will be included administratively?
Through the planning department administratively.
Okay. through the planning department administratively. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could ask staff to, could you speak to that, what that does when you add it to the unified plan that's different from just a variance for one sign?
Madam Chair, normally that would be a major amendment in another public hearing, but in effect, you already reviewed that last month and approved it. So all we're saying now is we'll take your approval, not have to bring it back again, and we'll add it into the language. And the department did discuss this, so we're on board with it.
Thank you. Are there other questions? We still have names here that I think your questions have been answered. No questions of staff or the petitioner? Is there discussion of the motion or revisions to the motion to include the... Because we need the findings on the...
We do need findings. Madam Chair, if I can again, I think what we need to do at this point is we need to split the motion we currently have on the table. We currently have one motion to approve both variances. I think it would be appropriate to split that motion to deal with each variance separately. And then I think it would be important to add this additional condition. And then if someone is supportive or not supportive, we need to get the findings on the record for each of those so we can have a good record of our decision.
Sorry, I haven't done that part. Do you need, I'm going to ask for clarification, a motion to split it? Or, because I have that option in my motions.
I believe, couldn't we just have we'll just have one motion, then we'll have another motion, and we'll do them separately?
We currently have a motion on the table, so we would either have to withdraw that motion or split the motion. I think it would be the appropriate procedure.
Record this one for a minute. Hold on.
Commissioner Coleman?
So you're talking about the motion from the last meeting? I would move to withdraw that motion so that we can redevelop a new one.
Hang on. Oops, I think I went the wrong way here. Oh, that was Mr. Coleman. Sorry.
So there's a motion to withdraw the previous motion. It's been seconded by Mr. Dinwiddie. Is there any opposition to that motion? Then I would entertain a new motion on the first sign. That motion passed.
Oh, that was the withdrawal.
The withdrawal, right? Commissioner Coleman?
In the case of 2010-64, request for variance for Providence, I move to approve the variance to allow an additional sign that would exceed 6 square feet for sign type A2, with the condition that, and understanding that the redundant information will be removed from the existing sign in sign 4 location, and that such approval be done administratively through the planning department. I find that the request meets all of the required conditions, standards for variance, that special conditions exist which are peculiar to the land involved. Providence is a large campus with multiple buildings, and certainly that presents wayfinding challenges to their clients. Number 2, that strict interpretations of the provisions of the sign ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district. That standard is met. Again, Providence is a large campus with multiple buildings with wayfinding challenges. That special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Once again, the standard is met, and Providence is, again, a large campus setting, and their need for appropriate signage does not constitute a pecuniary hardship. Standard number 4, granting the variance would be in harmony with the objectives of the sign ordinance and not impair the integrity, character, utility, and value of neighboring properties. The standard is met. The sign does not permit a use that is not otherwise permitted in the district in which property lies. Standard number 5, granting the variance will not materially add to visual clutter or visual blight. The standard is met. The sign requested is not out of character for the Providence campus. In standard number 6, the variance granted is a minimum variance that will make possible a reasonable economic use of the land or structure. Standard is met. The dimensions and appearance of the sign is not overly large for its purpose or surroundings.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Mr. Sawhill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I intend to support the motion. I think Commissioner Coleman did a good job with the 6 standards, and I would concur that they have been met. I think the sign is architecturally compatible with the other signs that are currently in the approved plan. And in this large campus, the additional signage is warranted and appropriate. So I will be supporting the motion.
Commissioner Garcia, did you wish to speak?
I just wanted to clarify, we're voting on each sign individually, and then we're voting on discussing the location of all the signs as a third item, because that was an issue in the last meeting.
No, the sign, all the issues with each sign is with that sign. There's
But
not
I understand
different
that.
issues with
I understand it's with each sign.
So we're
but-
just doing the one sign, and this is the sign that, this is the sign,
Something that had like the plan view of
the overview,
Yeah.
is that correct? Is that the sign you talked about? The sign with the aerial map? I was looking at Commissioner Coleman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, forgot you're there. No, I just wanted some clarification, because I know we're voting on this sign, then we're going to discuss the next sign, but there was also an issue of the location of all the signs, and I just want to make sure we're going to be discussing that issue as well.
No, that's not a separate issue. I think we're just doing the variance of each sign.
Okay.
And this is the sign with the aerial view that gives the direction to the towers, to understand the first sign.
The only reason I was asking was because at the last meeting we discussed the location of the signs, and there was an issue with one of the signs that I brought up because I felt it was a life safety issue because it had excessive information, and I didn't feel it was safe for someone to be trying to read that sign and drive at the same time.
I believe we dealt with that when...
We deleted that sign, and that will still stand.
Okay,
That action still stands.
That's what I was just verifying.
Yeah, this won't go back to that, yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Gasick, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'm going to still vote no on this one overall, and basically looking at the 4 variance standards, I do feel 1 through 4 have been adequately met, but when looking at the clutter of all the signs and the number of signs that are on the property as a whole, I think this sign is just adding to that clutter and that blight, and therefore it doesn't meet standard 5. And it'll make, I don't think it also makes the property it gives the property a better reasonable economic use of the land through this sign either, with the parking garage being adequately identified and the aerial view of the properties doesn't add to the wayfinding and help make reasonable economic use of that area in particular. So for the sign not meeting standards 5 and 6, I'm going to vote no.
Commissioner Dinwiddie, did you wish to speak?
I'm going to support the motion for a couple reasons. I listened to the testimony from last month, and then I went out and looked at the signs. And then I also went across the road and looked at UAA's campus and the UAA's signage because they have a similar laid out, spread out campus. I do have a little bit of, I think Providence needs to understand that a variance is something special, and 111 square feet is getting up there. 96 square feet, I guess I'm not real sure how you couldn't have got it done with 96 square feet. That's only, 100 or 19 square feet more. Then you would have only had one issue before us instead of two conditions on your variance. But that being said, I talked to my neighbors. They're elderly. They use Providence all the time. And there's so many new buildings going up at Providence. It's people, I think it meets all 6 conditions. And I think that particularly because it's a public, you have to understand who their clients are. They're elderly. The people that are sick, elderly, and want to get to it's a public health issue. And I think this, particularly number 2, should be the most important finding. That it would deprive the applicants it's more of a public safety issue that I think it should be signed. I think it's a large campus. People get confused. And, I could probably find my way around there pretty easily, but I think that we should support the motion. The other reason why I think we should support the motion is that it's Providence does everything classy from what I've seen. Their signs look fine. I think that they'll do a good job with it, and I think that that'll number 6. It doesn't really. It's not an economic issue for Providence. It's more or less fits into their scheme, and I'm going to support the motion.
Commissioner Kimmer?
Sorry, I'd like to say that I am going to support the motion. I think the 6 standards for variance have been met. In particular, I'd like to talk to number 5, granting the variance will not materially add to visual clutter or visual blight. I think the signs in question won't do that. I think they will be appropriate for the campus. It's a type of sign that's in keeping with all the other signage on campus. And I think it's necessary for some of the reasons that Commissioner Dinwiddie mentioned, that it's an issue of getting people to where they need to go. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Well, I will speak to the motion and repeat some of the things I said last time. I think it's a variance to an ordinance is a very serious thing, and as it says, they have to meet each of the 6 standards, not just one or some of them. And I think there's a high standard to meet when we allow some people to to not follow an ordinance everyone else has. I did vote to approve the sign plan that the hospital had, and they do have a plan to go outside the variance on a lot of their signs for the reasons mentioned, that it is a special institution. It has a lot of special needs, and a lot of those related to emergency entrances and the hospital part. And they're very different as a university, and I voted to approve that. In this instance of this sign, these are for mostly their doctor's offices. We're not talking about emergency entrances to the hospital. And their directions to 3 towers that we were told people have trouble finding, and I don't see that a 6-foot sign or a sign that meets the ordinance couldn't meet their need. I don't think it's economically depriving them. The standard is that, and it says specifically, variances aren't to be given because there's inconvenience to the petitioner, but there's actual harm being done there, and the standards met that they're not able to use their property in the same way other people are. They've already been given special consideration that other places don't because they're special. And I don't find that they do meet I should go through the conditions, that one, that their land is different, but I don't think they're deprived of property rights that others have by not being able to use a sign that meets the ordinance, because I think they could still give their directions on a sign that meets the ordinance. I think it does give them rights that other properties don't enjoy. And I don't think it is in character because there are already quite a few signs, and I think it does add to the clutter of the area. Their signs are attractive, and I think they do a good job, and they obviously provide a good service to the community, but that's not one of the standards that are met, and they have to meet all 6 of them. And I couldn't in good faith say, yes, they do meet all 6 of them, and then hold everybody else to the community to the same standard that we would be holding them to this time, because we've had other people come to us that actually could demonstrate some economic difficulty because they had to meet the exact ordinance as it's written when they wanted to do a different kind of a sign. So for that reason, I would not support the motion. And I think this is the directional sign. They could have a 6-foot square sign that says Towers ST and U, and that would give people direction and might be easier to read anyway. They haven't tried giving maps to the people coming. This isn't people just showing up at the emergency room for the most part, as I understood. This is people with doctor's appointments, so you do have some contact with people ahead of time. So I think there's other methods of getting people to the right buildings. And I'm certainly directionally challenged, so I appreciate good signs, but I think that it could be done and still meet the standards of the ordinance and not be given special consideration. And with that, if no one else wishes to speak, it'll be a vote. Ready? Is that everybody? Okay. And the motion passes. There are 2 nays and 5 affirmative votes, so the motion passes. And we'll move to the second sign. And I believe this is, and if you could describe the sign a little bit when you give the motion so we can remember which one it is. Commissioner Coleman?
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Did you get that?
I need you to restate it so it's on the record. It won't pick up.
Case number 2010-64, request by Providence for a sign variance to allow an additional sign that would exceed 6 square feet for sign type E at location A. I move to approve that request based on the fact that they have met the 6 standards required for a variance, for a sign variance, that number 1, special conditions exist which are peculiar to the land involved and which are not applicable to other land in the same district, deprive such property the ability to display signs. That standard is met. They're a large campus with multiple buildings that can present wayfinding challenges to their clients. I also pointed out at our last meeting that because of the size of their buildings and the size of their property, Providence actually, if these were located on separate lots, would actually be allowed much greater area of signage than they currently have. So that standard is met. Number 2, strict interpretation of the provisions of the sign ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of the sign ordinance. As I previously pointed out, the standard is met. Again, large campus, multiple buildings, wayfinding challenges. Standard number 3, special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant, and such conditions and circumstances do not merely constitute pecuniary hardship or inconvenience. Standard is met. They're a large campus. Their need for appropriate signage does not constitute pecuniary hardship. Condition number 4, granting the variance would be in harmony with the objectives of the sign ordinance and not impair the integrity, character, utility, and value of neighboring properties or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare, and will not permit a use that is not otherwise permitted in the district in which the property lies. As standard is met, the sign does not permit a use that is not otherwise permitted in the district in which the property lies. Standard number 5, granting the variance will not materially add to visual clutter or visual blight. The standard is met. The sign request is not out of character for the PAMC campus. Standard number 6, the variance granted is a minimum variance that will make possible a reasonable economic use of the land or structure. Standard is met. The dimensions and appearance of the sign is not overly large for its purpose or surroundings.
Motion's been seconded by Commissioner Sawhill. Do you wish to speak to the motion as well?
I intend to support this variance too. I would agree with Commissioner Coleman's analysis of the 6 standards. I guess for clarification, Commissioner Coleman, are you recommending that staff's condition of approval for that variance be added also?
Oh, I am. Thanks for bringing that up. If you could add that to my motion, please.
Thank you, Ian. This is a different sign from the others, as you pointed out, Madam Chairman. On page 40 of our packet has a diagram of sign type E at location A. It is a map depicting the towers and where you are and how to get to them. And again, at location A, I think this is an appropriate sign for that location to help people find their way. I think it's consistent with the architectural treatments of the rest of their signs, and will fit into the campus. And for those reasons, I will be supporting the motion.
Just a quick question. Could you tell me what page that map was on?
That map is on page, or the diagram is on page 40 of the staff packet.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Commissioner Garcia?
I do not plan on supporting the motion in this instance. I do not believe that this sign meets variance standard number 1. The existing sign, 2A, or 2A, I believe it was moved further towards where this sign is being shown on page 41. It would meet the existing need. I don't feel that that sign is required, and I believe it is a special condition for this property because I just don't feel it's necessary. I also believe it would not meet number 5, and it adds to the visual clutter. This is a plan view of the site, which I feel could be difficult for someone to use for wayfinding while they're driving. It's a unique sign for direction, which someone the typical person would not be used to, and I don't think it necessarily is a good wayfinding directional sign. And I just feel it added to clutter and confusion. So I do not plan on supporting this motion.
Commissioner Gasick?
I'm not going to be supporting this motion either for many of the same reasons that Commissioner Garcia stated. I think it adds confusion in a wayfinding sense to try and get around when people are moving at decent speed in their vehicle. It adds again to the clutter on the campus, especially in relation to the neighboring signs. It doesn't make possible. There is already possible reasonable economic use of the land without the sign in place, so I don't think it is needed, and it doesn't meet Standard 6 either. So I think not meeting 3 standards is sufficient reason enough to vote no for this sign variance.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Okay, then we will vote for it or against it. Is that everybody? So it's 1, 2, 3, 3 to 3? 4 to 3. Okay, so the motion passes. So the variance will be granted for that sign as well. That was 4 to 3. And I believe we can get the chair to come back and proceed with the rest of the meeting. I'll pick up his things. Is this all his?
I got it.
I've always had a tough time with this.
It's touchy, isn't it?
The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Any commissioners have cases that they wish to pull? I didn't see anybody wish to pull, so this motion is to pass the consent agenda. Moved by Commissioner Gasick, seconded by Commissioner Joyner. Any opposition? Hearing and seeing no, consent agenda passes. Okay, moving on to the regular agenda. We have one case, 2010-091, for the Municipality of Anchorage Fire Department, site plan and landscape plan review for a public facility. Is there a staff report?
Just very briefly, Mr. Chairman, thank you. A couple of items just to point out for your information. This is a final site plan review and the concept review for the landscape portion of the proposal. Essentially, what the fire department's doing is replacing one of the buildings on site, Fire Station Number 3, adjacent to Alaska Regional Hospital. The building, there are 3 buildings on the property, a classroom, a maintenance facility, and then the fire station itself. The station itself is the building that's being replaced. It's a split-level building, and vehicles can enter either from the upper level and park in the bays there, or that they can come in the northernmost driveway cut and park in the lower level of the existing fire station. This change will put all of the vehicles at the lower level, and that will then allow the municipality to remove the controlled traffic signal that's currently used by the fire department when they have to get vehicles out of the upper bays. A couple of conditions. We need a fuel spill response plan from the fire department for this property. There is a recommendation from the department for pedestrian sidewalk between the buildings and along the road corridor. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. The department recommendations in full are on page 4 of the report.
I don't see the bit about the fuel spill response plan in the conditions.
Condition number 1 on the first part.
Okay, all right. Sorry
Site
about
plan
that.
part.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Joyner.
Yes, there's a discussion of the trees that are too close to the parking lot that are being moved. If they've just gone in, is that part of this plan that we haven't approved yet, or is that from previous plantings? Or is that a question for the petitioner?
That would be for the petitioner, Commissioner Joyner, but I do not believe there are any new plantings going in just yet. But let's ask the applicant.
The staff report said newly planted or located too close to the parking lot, but we could ask the petitioner. Page 3.
Commissioner Joyner, yes, I see it in the report. I was there yesterday and did not notice them, so I think we need clarification from the applicant.
Commissioner Dinwiddie?
I'm familiar. They are trees that were planted last year from the fire station expansion. They are brand new trees. They're still being beat, I think. So we didn't do the work, but I do know that the ones they're talking about are ones that are just brand new.
So it sounds like we'll need the petitioner to come forward.
Good evening, members. Mark Hart with Burkhart Craft Architects, representing the petitioner, municipality of Anchorage and Anchorage Fire Department.
Mr. Joyner?
Yes, we'll ask that question again. Is the landscaping that's in the plan that's not approved yet already? I mean, did some go in last year, or what's the What's the,
Bit of a confusing project. I think what Sharon was referring to, back when the Fire Training Center was in the bridge design process, there was a campus-wide landscape plan and site development plan and parking variance done for the entire campus. That project is nearing completion of construction right now. I believe what Sharon's talking, because she was gone before I got a chance to ask her about this, but what it sounds like she's talking about are landscaping components that were installed as part of the adjacent project. She noticed some spacing issues related to those installations, which has caused her to write the recommendation to make sure that our trees on this project that is presented, consider that setback. But I haven't confirmed that with her.
Other questions for the petitioner? Mr. Kimmerer?
Yes, do you have any issues with the department recommendations 1 through 4 on the staff report? Have you had a chance to review them?
We don't object to them in terms of content. There are some semantics to them, though, that I should probably address. They'll be easily resolved one way or another. For the site plan piece, item 1, that's probably a clarification that should be made. I'm not sure the landscape pack, the submittal packet that you have was put together by a reference who is actually retained directly by the municipality of Anchorage. And so I've never seen the actual final packet. I believe there was a discrepancy between civil drawings and landscape drawings because we discussed two options for the fueling station to actually be relocated from its existing condition. We are not proposing that at this point. So it will remain in its existing location and not be modified. With respect to the concerns on the for photographs and the methods of containment, we'd be happy to have Anchorage Fire Department work with staff to provide that information, but it's in essence not part of our work. So I'm not sure what details we would be providing other than what response Anchorage Fire Department can provide her. The second piece is item 2 to that same area, which is concerning a sidewalk actually south of our project limits that would connect the one we are proposing up to the edge of the fire department property over adjacent to the hospital property. Again, in the original plan, this group approved campus-wide. That path was part of that approved plan. It was not installed as part of the adjacent project, and I don't know why. We specifically didn't show it because we have a tight budget, and I believe we can work with the adjoining project to figure out where that lies, if there's funding available to have that project funded, and work that again out with staff, but we agree that it should happen.
And no issue with 1 or 2 of the preliminary site plan approval?
No.
Thank you.
I've got a question for you. It looks like we have 2 actions in front of us. One is for a public facility site plan review, and the other is for landscaping. And the site plan review says specifically for the site plan for Anchorage Fire Department, Fire Station number 3. I don't see any property lines. I don't see any kind of delineation of what constitutes the site for Fire Station 3 versus the master plan that came before us last year. And I think if we had those delineations, it would be a little easier for us to understand what is and what's not up for our review and approval. Are you able to describe the limits, the project limits of your project?
Only from a contractual basis. They don't exist in reality. It is one parcel of land. Landscaping in the plan that the group approved, and I'm going from memory here, but I believe you'll find that there was little to no landscaping indicated around Fire Station 3 at that time because it was known that there would be either a renovation or a replacement.
Well, I'm not talking about the landscaping. I'm just talking about the site plan review. We've got two issues before us. The first is the public facility site plan. So we're commenting on, parking configuration, those kinds of things.
I'm sorry. I think in that case, you should be reviewing this case as the site plan is affected at a campus level. And one of the reasons why pertains to parking. Moving the apparatus bays to the lower level displaces some of the parking that was in the plan that this group approved. Our proposal is to replace that parking by supplementing the upper lot to some degree, providing new parking north of the apparatus bays that would be primarily used by shift firefighters, right adjacent to the building. The balance then fills in areas that are along the western edge of the campus so that the entire campus count remains the same. So it in essence is a modification of the campus-wide circulation and parking and everything in between.
It's just the concern has to do with the clarity of what we're taking action on. I believe, we have to go from memory because we're not really given the approved site plan that we took action on a year ago, which was sort of this master plan for all of these facilities. So, and the exhibits that we have sort of crop off portions of the parking, so we're not able to look at this as an overall campus. So my assumption was that we would zoom in and focus strictly on the site plan for Fire Station 3, and that we weren't getting into overall campus issues. But perhaps staff can clarify that a little bit for us.
Madam Chair, I'm afraid I cannot, but I will look through the file to see if there's a copy of last year's plan.
What do you believe your contractual limits are?
It's interesting. Contractual limits really go to the edge of the fueling station to the west, the edge of the existing firefighter memorial to the south, over to the curb cut by the maintenance shop to the north, and obviously the airport house on the east with respect to building a building and landscaping. But in order to make that work, there are modifications well west of that with respect to parking, and there are also some construction issues with respect to utilities because the points of connection are over on the west boundary as well. I think maybe the best way, if I could make a suggestion to appease your concern there, is we can certainly provide a copy of the site plan for the next review period that was approved earlier, and I can do my best to describe what we're really impacting in it now, and then show that perhaps a little clearer in the next submission.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of confused about what, like the western edge of the campus, for example. And, in the absence of property lines, it's kind of like you're affecting the whole thing. I don't know what your contractual limits are, and I don't know how your contractual limits translate to what we're supposed to be reviewing here. And I'm not sure also, perhaps this is something, a point that staff can weigh in on, is our ability to allow the design team to move forward with the proposed landscaping while deferring a decision on the public facility site plan until we get, more information. I mean, just personally, I don't know how the rest of the commission feels. I'm a little confused in terms of the scope of the action on the public facility site plan, because it seems as though this is a larger site than just one building, and if it is just one building, there's no demarcation, no internal property line, no boundary that we would use to give an affirmative ruling. So I'm confused. Staff, is it possible to take action on one and defer the other?
Absolutely, yes.
Does that cause any delays in your project schedule?
It will if there's exceptions to it, obviously. The timing of the project is that by next month, you would have the final landscape approval pending the comments from tonight. Those need to be in hand in order to meet a scheduled abatement and relocation of Fire Station 3 into the adjacent campus buildings, an abatement of the building that they're in now, and demolition prior to snowfall, because the contract for demolition and the contract for new construction will be split. We obviously would want to know where we're at before we move down that road. So there's actually a bid package been submitted for purchasing review now for the demolition and abatement contract. So we can certainly do it, but we have no margin for error.
And they wouldn't issue a permit unless you had this
That's correct.
Approval. Okay, any other questions?
If I could offer one clarification from staff's report, there's a lot of confusion. I just want to make sure that the group is clear. There's a lot of confusion about the traffic signal that we're proposing is eliminated on Airport Heights. There are currently 3 curb cuts entering this parcel off of Airport Heights Road, and obviously the large one is the one that we're routing all the traffic now to, that separates the Fire Station 3 area or property from the maintenance facility. The traffic signal is appropriately eliminated by virtue of that change, not because they use it when they deploy the apparatus. They use it when they bring the apparatus back because the existing station is a drive-through bay. Once the bay is put on the lower campus area and a drive-through arrangement is provided, the signal is no longer necessary at all.
Okay. We did have a question from Commissioner Dinwiddie.
On your conceptual landscape plan, you have a roof deck. Is that going to be a green roof?
We're not sure yet. The building is such that it's still programmatically moving around a little bit, and what I mean by that is right now there's program elements below that deck. The changes may result in that deck being an isolated self-supporting deck. I would like to make a recommendation that if you are short on landscaping for the site overall plan, that you consider a green roof for extra landscaping on the. It seems like it's a brick building from the drawings. You would think you'd have the load capacity to support a green roof, and firemen have plenty of time on their hands in between calls. You would think that they might enjoy something like that.
Any other questions for the petitioner? And I'm assuming you have no presentation to make.
Didn't plan on one, though.
Okay, thank you. So, the issue rests with the commission. It's time for a motion. And again, we have two separate actions here. The first is for the site plan review, and the other is for the public facility landscaping.
Are we being asked to make 2 separate motions?
Yeah, I believe we need to take 2 separate actions.
Thank you.
So the first one, I believe, just to take it in the order that it's on the staff recommendation, the first one we should decide on is the public facility site plan. and that's a final. Commissioner Kimmerer.
Yes, I move to approve for final approval of the site plan for case 2010-091 Anchorage Fire Department, Fire Station Number 3, as meeting the requirements for final site plan approval for UDC. I would like to include department recommendation 2 with a little bit of a rewrite to say that the petitioner will work with the adjacent property owners to add a sidewalk to the classroom building on the western edge of the existing parking lot. I'm going to strike condition recommendation number 1. I don't quite understand why this is in here. It's an existing feature on the site. I understand it's adjacent to the site, but I don't know exactly what they're asking for. I feel like it's an existing feature to stay in place as is and a separate issue. So that's the motion I'm going to make.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Gasick has seconded the motion. Commissioner Garsha has a question.
I was just going to speak to that first item really quick. Commissioner Kimmerer, I think what they're trying to get to in staff is that fueling station, it's a code requirement that if they have a capacity of 1,300 gallons of fuel, they have to have a hazardous containment fuel plan. And I think they're just sort of bringing that up because this is a campus, and there's confusion as to, they're just trying to bring it to someone's attention that it's possibly a code violation that they're not meeting the requirements of. And since there's confusion over whose building it is because it's a campus issue, they're trying to probably bring that to attention.
I guess my comment is should it be a requirement of final site plan approval for this fire station? That's what I don't quite understand. I understand it's important to bring it to their attention.
That was the reason for my earlier questions, because it's important to know what's in this site plan review or not in this site plan review in order to give it final approval. And because that area is not clear, I was hoping that the motion would be formed in such, like a postponement. But we're moving ahead. Commissioner Joyner?
Well, there's been a staff report. It said that details for the containing fuel spills are needed for the final review for it. So I assume that that's something that does need to be in the site plan for it to be approved. So I guess I would prefer to have it stay in.
So we're at the part of the order where we're speaking to the motion. So do you not intend to support the motion then?
I don't have a problem with the motion. I just would rather add that keep that in as a condition. I suppose we could, I could propose another condition be made, or
a friendly amendment to the motion?
if we do that.
It's just kind of odd because he took it out as part of his motion.
I'm so glad I did, that I could make this more confusing.
I just asked that it be described in there, and it seems like it's something that's required, and I don't know why we wouldn't want it to be part of the plan. I didn't hear an objection to doing it by the petitioner, I don't believe.
Can I ask a question of the petitioner, if that's okay? Or
I think we're beyond
are we beyond that?
Let's try to handle some things in order here. I'm interpreting your request as a request for a friendly amendment to the person who made the motion. Is that agreeable to you based on her argument?
That is agreeable to me, yes.
How about the seconder?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have the two original conditions with the slight modification of condition 2. Okay. Okay. Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Such as findings.
Well, I guess I'm going to maybe make this more confusing. I don't think I'm going to support my own motion. I think some information that came, or questions as to really the project limits, what's included in the project for a final site plan, overall parking, if we're actually looking at that. I don't think we've been provided that information. It looks like there's the sidewalk in question to the classroom building is really an issue that's by the same owner as the fire station, as I understand it. So I don't think there's quite enough information here for me to support a final site plan approval.
I'm just sort of muddling through procedure. You have the option to withdraw your motion,
Okay.
or anyone else, I believe, has the option of postponing, which takes precedent over the motion that's on the floor. Mr. Gasek.
Can I move to postpone this case then, please?
Yeah, we just have
The
to get it
motion
electronically written into the record here.
Oh.
So we have a motion to postpone. Do we have a second? It's been seconded by Commissioner Dinwiddie. Well, I'm not sure. I think if I understand the petitioner correctly, he has the information and he plans to submit supplemental information at the very next meeting.
If I could, Mr. Chair, you actually do have the overall campus site plan in your packet. It's the last page that's supplemented with the parking variance document. So in essence, what you see on the submittal we gave you are the changes to that plan.
That's helpful. But did I understand that you'll have supplemental information at the next meeting?
If the group denies the site plan approval today, I would have no choice but to bring you some supplementary information. I believe...
Yeah, since we've already moved to postpone, or we have a motion on the floor to postpone, whether or not the very next UDC meeting you would be prepared with I believe the information regarding fuel spill containment and those kinds of things are felt to be missing from the packet. Would you have those ready, or would you need us to at least give you a month?
I'm still not sure I'm understanding your question.
There's a question as to whether or not we need to have a date certain as to the length of the postponement. I'm trying to make sure that we don't name a date that you're not prepared to meet.
Well, we would have to be on your next month's meeting. And I'm not sure that, actually, that's not true. I forget the schedule now.
September 8th.
Yeah, September 8th.
Yes, it would be the September meeting. That poses a scheduling problem. actually, with the demolition contract. I guess the confusion for me, and I realize I'm out of order, is that we don't take exception to providing the information as a condition of approval. Don't have a problem with that. I would like to do it administratively because I think the fire department has to be directly involved in providing the answer. It's not something we can do. I don't have a problem with the condition. So I'm not sure why that item would stand in the commission's way from approving the site plan.
All right, just going over our options here. We do have the option that if this motion to postpone can be withdrawn, we can take action, vote yea or nay to postpone at this point. But I believe if we act not to postpone, then we take action and we're back to where we started. So I think we should probably... you're like second in the list here. Yes, we do. Oh. I know. So, all right. I only have 2 ears, and I have 3 people talking to me. Commissioner Gasick.
Yeah, I guess I withdrew the motion. Then at this point, I'm just concerned. I think it's important if there's dissent and there's some need for information that it would be important to postpone the case rather than deny the case. So that's what my intent was originally, to postpone, and that's my concern.
But based on the information that the petitioner has said, is that if he's agreeable to provide that, it can be provided as a condition of getting the permit. And,
right.
And then just a matter of whether or not we need to see it, or we just need to know that it would be in that final submittal or not. Commissioner Sahil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my thoughts are if the commission or some of the commission members are uncomfortable with going forward at this point, they feel the information's a little lacking on the scope of the project, I think we should postpone. And I understand that it causes some hardship to the fire department, but we don't want to approve something we're uncomfortable with or don't feel like we have all the information for. If we are going to postpone, I think we have an obligation to let them know what specific information we want included next time through, so we don't keep doing this over and over again. So I wanted to make that point that if we are going to postpone, that we should give them specific direction on what we want. I did notice this tiny site plan in the back, and it's difficult to read. I guess one of my disappointments in this submittal is that this master plan was not updated to show the overall site with the new fire station added. If that information would have been provided, we could have had the bigger view. We could have saw how it fits in, and it would have been easier to review. I would note on the site plans submitted, there is not a line indicating, limits of the project, limits of disturbance, no demolition plan that shows what's being pulled out. So it is a little difficult to review. And I guess being a relatively new board member, don't we normally get a concept site plan, then a final? And then this one, we're just going straight to final? And if we are going straight to final, I think the applicant has a higher standard to submit a more complete application. So I'm a little troubled by that. With all that being said, I do site planning and plans all the time, so I understand their proposal. I understand their limits. I'm comfortable approving this tonight. But if members aren't, again, I would urge a postponement with direction on what to bring in. So I guess the motion to postpone has been withdrawn, so now we're to the main motion, and I will be supporting the main motion if the commission doesn't want to go that way and wants to get additional information. And I think the appropriate thing to do is postpone with specific direction. And I think our postponements need to be date certain.
Thank you. Mr. Joyner?
If the petitioner has agreed to meet the conditions, then I'd prefer we put other conditions and proceed, because I'm not sure what is missing specifically what is missing that we need in order to proceed tonight. So I'd like to hear specifically what is missing that would cause us to postpone it, and can that be put in a condition, which we do all the time. And also, I believe we do often do site plan reviews as final. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we treat site plan reviews differently than landscape reviews, and many times it is just a single review. I think most times it's just a single review step.
So I intend to support the motion to approve unless there's specific items that are lacking that can't be taken care of through conditions added that staff can review.
Commissioner Dinwiddie.
On condition, staff recommendation number 1 about the fueling station, for someone who has a lot of fuel on a regular basis, I think that the fire department, in particular the Muni, has this under control, and that they're going to have 5,000 or 10,000 gallons of diesel on site. They've got more than this board has really got to worry about, and in not only containment, because that's sometimes when you do have a major spill, you call the fire department. So, they're going to be. I'm totally comfortable with them having their P's and Q's and everything under control, and if that's the only issue for holding this up, I think that we should. I'm comfortable with approving the site plan as well.
Mr. Coleman?
I agree with Mr. Sahil and what Patricia said here. I was prepared to vote on this and to support the motion to approve it. But having said that, I'm a little disappointed, I guess, and just, I had to really look at things carefully. I think we all would have benefited from a presentation, either using the overhead or having some boards here to at least explain what's going on and the changes between the master plan and your proposed site plan. I think that would have been very helpful. Next time.
Mr. Kimmer.
Yeah, I guess my worries might be helped out if I could ask staff a question. The condition number 1 was put in there by staff, provide site details of existing fueling station, including photographs and methods describing techniques for containment of fuel spills. On page 2 of the staff report, second from the last paragraph, it says details as to methods of containing fuel spills are needed for the final review. So that's why, to me, it was a little confusing. This is the final review as far as I thought, so I thought we weren't getting this information that staff was requesting. If staff tells me they are comfortable with this condition and they can work with the petitioner administratively in some sort of administrative final review, then I would support the motion to approve the site plan.
Mr. Chairman, we're comfortable with it. We can meet with the petitioner separately regarding the spill plan, certainly.
And I'd like to also add that, it says on 1 of 2 of the landscape plan, existing screen, dumpster, and fueling station, there's no leader line pointing to anything. It is a fairly confusing plan to look at. But I will support the motion to approve if it's made. Thank you.
I would, I guess, I can't support the motion to approve, and part of it has to do with, why this body looks at final site plans. If our charge is to approve the site plan for Fire Station Number 3, I haven't been given the Fire Station Number 3 site plan. I don't know what the limits are. The site plan that we took action on a while ago is different. It doesn't show the configuration of the new proposed site plan for Fire Station Number 3. I just feel that the information that we have is deficient for me to add value to this process one way or another. I'm taking on faith that the fire department has great spill policies. I take it on faith that someone else will approve a spill design. We take it on faith that our dumpsters are going to be located in the right place. It just seems like there's more that is being asked of us than we have the materials and are prepared to do. I would not support it because I don't have a clear delineation of what the site for Fire Station Number 3 is in order for me to say I approve this site plan. So with that, I believe it's time for, excuse me. Yeah, just in terms of instructions to the voters, if this is to get voted down, they have to reapply and come back to us. There's a waiting period too, I think, as opposed to a motion to postpone, which would allow them to come back on September 8th if someone makes that motion. I think the commission has spoken in terms of their position. So it's time to either vote on this motion or to entertain a motion to postpone.
If the motion failed, would somebody be able to make a motion to postpone? No, it has to come first.
Correct.
If the motion fails, you could make a motion to reconsider.
Okay, so I think it's time to vote on the motion. No one has made a motion to postpone. I don't have that. It's not showing up on my...
Yeah, my screen says motion to postpone. That's why I was asking.
Oh, that's because it hasn't been cleared from the last time. Yeah.
It's the way the
We understand.
system works, and I had to record the first one, and the second one was sitting there. And now I've moved back to the other one, and what would happen is I would hit vote, and it would come up in your screen for the correct one.
Okay, but just to clarify, the motion to postpone was withdrawn. And what we are voting on is the motion to approve the public facility site plan with the two conditions as stated. It was made before we got sidetracked on the postponement and the withdrawal of the postponement. We're just working with the computers here to bring up the voting capabilities.
I don't know why it won't show up. Hold on just a minute.
Is there a way we could have a show of hands? Would that work?
If I hit start voting, it should switch, so just a second. Let's see what happens. There you go.
All right, and you can see it has the correct motion.
Does it include condition 1 or only condition 2?
No, it was modified to have condition 1 and 2 by friendly amendment.
Everybody?
No. I'm missing Garcia and Coleman on the vote.
It's on there.
There it is. It's a little bit delayed between. Okay, that's everybody.
Motion passes 6-3. Now I'll entertain a motion to approve the public facility landscaping.
Are we discussing the motion, since this is a different motion?
Well, we have to have the motion before we can discuss it. My screen isn't back to where I can see.
I haven't. There's a delay today on these systems.
And just maybe while we're waiting for the computers to clear, this is a preliminary landscape review, correct? They're not asking for final at this point.
Give me 1 second.
What's this? Is this?
It should have cleared. Hold on just a second. Let's just start again. Okay, that one's there. That's a different, I cleared something off. Okay.
Well, I'm very confused. Commissioner Gasek, did you move to approve? Okay.
Okay, move to approve case number 2010-91, concept review of landscape plan for Anchorage Fire Station number 3 with staff conditions 1 and 2.
And that's been seconded by Commissioner Dinwiddie. You should speak to your motion.
Yeah, overall the landscape concept review is visually attractive as outlined in the staff report, and it complements the buildings on site and provides safe and efficient and comfortable public use of the site. So I'm going to be supporting my motion.
Anyone else wish to speak? Commissioner Dinwiddie?
I seconded this motion because I support the motion to approve it. It has Cole Hardy plant material, Zone 3, low maintenance, which are both good for fire stations, and so I move that we approve it.
Anyone else? I will also be supporting the motion. I think that the consolidation of the driveways into one point is a great idea, and the way that you've handled the landscaping in the areas around the building is commendable. Any objection to passing the motion? Hearing and seeing none, it passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask for some advice or a recommendation here because we will be coming back for final. I appreciate the comments Mr. Coleman made about lack of a presentation. I'm not unfamiliar with the process here, and in the years that I sat on the board, part of our goal was to streamline the process for petitioners as much as possible, and we got to a point where the planning department recommended to me as chair that we make sure petitioners know that a presentation wasn't necessarily required. Being away from the board for a while, I called the planning department to ask that very question, and it was suggested to me that a presentation wasn't necessary and that I should be prepared to answer some questions. So my question to all of you is, if you find it helpful, I'd be happy to prepare one for the final landscape, and I'd be happy to do so at a campus level and explain to you everything you want to know about the campus of this fire station. You just need a little help understanding what you would like.
Just speaking for myself, I don't think it's necessary to make a presentation on every case, and I think that, the process can be streamlined. If the package is clear, then our action is clear. But in my criticism this time, and it passed anyway, was just the lack of clarity in what we were supposed to be approving. But you guys made it through anyway, so... anyone else wish to comment on the need for a presentation? Mr. Joyner?
Well, it could be that because this came to us before and we've had so many new commissioners since then that some of us remembered and a lot of us weren't here before.
I can fully appreciate it. I'm just saying, given where we are, would you like us to be prepared to show you more detail at the final for landscape?
I think it would be a nice courtesy to see the final final site plan with your fire station on it.
Be happy to do it.
It's certainly not required. I wouldn't make it a requirement.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Dinwiddie?
Oh, I was just going to say that, it's not a standalone building, it's not a single fire station, it's part of a campus effect, and that's why it's kind of nice to see the whole big picture scenario, but that would be a good thing.
Thank you. Moving on down to the reports. I have no reports. Does anybody have any reports that they'd like to make? Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a request, I believe it originated with Ms. Joyner, about a tour of completed landscape projects, and everyone was emailed asking to take a look at your calendar and suggest a date. For a tour, we really need about 3 days' notice. We'd like more, but we must have 3. Since you'd be touring as a group, it has to be noticed on the Muni website. If everyone would like to think it over and email tomorrow or Friday with what you've got available, and we'll take what looks like most in common and set something up.
Would you like me to comment? I don't know who went on the field trip we had before, maybe only James and I. Did you go? I can't remember how long ago it was, but the idea is this: we look at these plans all the time, and some of us are out there in real life looking at it afterwards and others aren't, and it's totally different even for us to see when we talk about spacing and issues with pedestrian access and trees that are going to get large being in a small space, to go out and look afterwards and see what did it look like 3 years after, 1 year after. What does it look like when it doesn't get any maintenance or the level of maintenance it gets for so many years? And often we're making recommendations, not on specific ones to tell landscape architects what to do, but to the city sort of overall. So, and then, the landscaping's one thing I see, but the hardscape too that I'm not so familiar with, I found it helpful to go and have people comment on, 3 years after, here's what it looks like and what we didn't expect. And some things look really nice, like the museum. Contrast that site where it gets good maintenance with what normally happens. I just found it gives you a better idea when you're looking at a plan and you see it looking like this, what it's going to look like in real life 5 years down the line. So. And I'm about to go off the commission, but I thought that it'd be helpful, and we talked about people who participate in the review process and working with the contractors and dealing with our recommendations to speak to sort of how the process works once it leaves here and how it gets implemented. It's sort of nice to see the whole picture instead of just what we see here. But so we proposed a couple dates, but it's mostly to see if people really want to do that or not.
What was did you have an agenda proposed for the projects that we would visit?
There are several people, we wanted people's ideas and to see if we want to do it, but we talked with the municipal forester and Isabel Roy, I almost said it, Allende, Isabel, Roy, and Sharon and Francis, I think, about things we'd want to look at, and then people that are out there and see it all the time can put together a route that makes sense where you see a variety of things. And I said I'd help with that if they want me to, but it'd be, so we don't have the route or the plan. We have a list of things that, mostly what I just mentioned, to look at, and other people on the commission may have things you particularly would like to see or you'd find helpful that we could incorporate in and then make a route that makes sense so we see as much as we can in a couple hours.
There was some discussion, and I can't remember this email. I have to apologize.
I think it just came yesterday, maybe, or
Oh, okay.
day before.
There was some discussion a year and a half, 2 years ago. It all kind of runs together about landscaping the slopes on the snow retention facility out on South C Street. If there's conditions like that where things are chronically failing, that would be good to include.
Where the woodlot is?
Yeah. You remember that? You remember that case? Where Elise made a plea to not require the trees on the slopes because all the trees that had been planted were dead.
I'll put a note of that. There's other things on C Street, so you could sort of do a tour of C Street and see an awful lot of things, some without even getting out of the vehicle, I think. And I'm sure Mr. Kimmer, Mr. Dinwiddie probably have ideas.
So the action for all of us is to get back to who with schedule availability?
Well, let's pick Francis. He's not here. He's the one who started to coordinate it, so Francis McLaughlin. And
so sometimes it's really difficult to herd many different people's schedules together. Are there 3 different schedule alternatives that we're voting on, prioritizing, or how does that work? I didn't get the email.
Some people don't seem to have gotten an email. The email just said, it was from Jill, and it just said there was a proposal to do a field trip, and I think, what was the date, September 1st? Wednesday?
Francis was proposing
6 to 8.
September 1st.
And if you were interested in that date or another date, to respond to the email.
Okay. And when are these responses now due back?
Sooner the better. And if people know tonight that's a terrible time and we should do it a different week, we didn't want to wait really late until it's winter and it's dark early.
Yeah, September 1st is what it says, from 6 to 8, Wednesday. It's a Wednesday night.
Okay.
I guess I think it's a great idea, and I'd like to go, and that week would work for me. I'll get it on my calendar and get a response back to staff. One of the things I'm also interested in, I got some feedback from project management and engineering lately that a lot of the landscape plans are over-specifying shrubs for planting areas, and they're having a difficult time actually fitting them in, physically fitting them. And my comment was, well, then you're finding other places for them, right? The plant count that we have approved is what's getting placed, and their response was sometimes. So I was a little concerned by that response. I think, Jeff had an issue recently that he shared with us that, the plants that are specified in the plans really aren't getting planted. The caliper and the height aren't there. I think for me personally, that's a concern. What are we doing here if they're just ignoring what we approve? I think they should have some flexibility in the field to fit things. I want it substantially like we approve, but those kind of issues would be good to take a look at too in our tour.
Yeah, we should be able to look at some of those sites, and then the people who are actually on the field where they're being installed can talk to us about this is the kind of thing that comes up, and here's what we do or don't do, and then we'll have the chance to ask them, themselves, which we don't usually have because it leaves us, and then who knows what happens. But it should happen like we approved it.
Yeah, it should.
Yeah.
It should.
I'm all for this. I'm all for this. have a list. I can have it too. I guess I've been doing this 20 years, and I've seen projects that I did 20 years ago that look great today, and I've seen projects I've done 2 years ago that look like hell. And I think that it's important that we probably take a look at, because there's some pushing of the envelope that this board's actually approved some stuff that, there's an entire street in East Anchorage that was done by several different contractors. We were one of them, and the entire road plant palette was all different growers, but it was one species or two species, and the entire road is dead. And there's maybe 3 trees on the whole road that lived through the process out of hundreds. And it's important that we take a look at those kind of successes and failures and make sure we don't, because it's city money that's getting spent. And the only solution now to that road is just go cut it all down. And I think it's a great idea. I'm all for it, and I could definitely have some suggestions.
Well, you can confirm me for the first. And others, if they could get your confirmation in by the end of the week so that we can get on with the planning, that would be great.
And I do, for new people that don't know what I do, I work for Division of Forestry, and we work with cities all the time to try to help them design and plan and maintain so that our money, public money, is well spent, and things survive and grow to a point that they're actually benefiting us. So I have that interest in seeing that things survive, and a lot of people have input on the process that makes that happen or not happen. I think it's important for us to have input into that. We have a lot of good experience on this commission to bring to that discussion.
If you do leave the commission, and I'm still in a state of disbelief, but we need to find another arborist to take over what you've been providing. I think that would be a real gap if we didn't have someone with that kind of background.
I thought you had to recruit your replacement before
That's right. You can't leave until you've got a suitable replacement.
These long meetings the last few months makes it hard to talk other people into You can only have them apply too. You don't have any say over who gets appointed.
Any other reports? How about a motion to adjourn? Oh, heck, does this have to be done electronically?
No, not.
Any objection to the motion? All right, we're adjourned.